Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have two people on. I have Jodie and her son, Michael. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. So happy to have you here. So Michael is a speller. He's my first speller. We've been talking about spelling, about RPM, S2C, and the speller's method. And Michael is my first speller to come on and join us. I'm so happy to have him here and hear everything that he has to say. I know he's very passionate about getting word out. So we want to hear whatever he has to say. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk to Mom. Then we're going to bring Michael back on and hear what he has to say. Okay, Jodie. So whenever I do an interview with a mom, I always ask the same questions in the beginning because I'm just curious to hear what people's answers are. Tell me about your pregnancy with Michael and the childbirth. Tell me how all of that went. Was it normal? Were there any red flags?
It was pretty normal. During my pregnancy, it was pretty easy. My daughter's only 17 months older than Michael. I had just been through it really, and it was fine.
Okay.
And
he's a middle child, right?
He's a middle child. And it was fine up until the end. I'm pretty tall. I'm 5'10", pretty active. And we were 36 weeks in, and I went and got weighed, and I only gained 16 pounds. And they were concerned about that. And I said, well, my daughter Samantha, who I had in Atlanta, I said, we went through the same thing except the last month I gained like 15 pounds.
Wow.
Just put on a ton of weight in the last month. And they said, oh no, we're worried about it. They did an ultrasound. He's less than 4 pounds. We need to get him out.
We need to get him out. I would think the opposite. They want him to stay in
Well,
and cook a little longer.
Failure to thrive. He's
Okay.
not thriving in your womb, so we need to take him
Okay.
out. And I didn't want to. We spent like 2 days of just me sitting on the couch and anyway. So the ultrasound did it. They all had a meeting and said, yes, something's going on. This isn't right. Well, they induced, which I wasn't thrilled about either. And he came out 5.5 pounds. They were 1.5 pounds off on the ultrasound. You should have never touched him. Would have, gained another 1.5 pounds in 4 weeks and come out fine. So I'm still a little pissed about that. And so he did have to go into an incubator for a few days. He was very small. Like I said, 5.5 pounds, just kind of, but it didn't take him any time at all to put on weight, and he grew and hit all his milestones, as a baby. And I say that as a baby. And I breastfed. It was easy.
And then did he start speaking on time, or was that delayed?
No, he spoke on time. He walked at 10 months. He spoke, had individual words, mummy, up, Tigger, poo, sang Itsy Bitsy Spider as best he could. He had, again, any toy you'd give him, he kind of knew what to do with. I remember giving him a little basketball and watching him shoot it into the little Tykes basketball hoop, and just played. And he and my daughter were close in age, so they'd sit at the little Tykes table and eat their snacks. And we did have one interesting thing that happened. When he was 9 months old, he had an ear infection, and so dutiful mom goes and gets some antibiotics, and he did not react well to the antibiotic. Terrible diarrhea. Just the moment I gave him the antibiotics, it was a few hours later, and it was so kind of concerning that I actually didn't even give him the rest of them, because he just kept having diarrhea and it was just, so I just stopped that. Of course, the ear infection went away, and we didn't really have any issue after that. And so that was like really the only physical, he wasn't sick all the time.
Did anything precede the ear infection, like a No. Okay.
No, not that I know of. He really wasn't sick all the time.
He was not.
No.
Okay.
And then it happens.
So what was that, around like 18 months, 2 years old? That's 18 months. Yeah.
18 months.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard, this story.
And then what happened? What, he had a regression? He lost his words or what?
Total regression. And so his regression was he stopped looking at us. I would give him a toy and he would just drop it. Would drop it. That far away look in his eyes, stopped talking completely, and began running nonstop. When I say 23 hours a day, I am not exaggerating. He ran, he was seeking, sensory input that I know now. He ran 23 hours a day.
So that tells me he wasn't sleeping well.
He would pass out for 2 hours. My husband and I played tag team. When he was diagnosed, I did quit my part-time job, because you do stuff like that. And I was also pregnant with number 3. So, I would always say, to my husband, look, somebody's got to fund this circus. So you've got to sleep and go to work.
Yeah.
So we did tag team a lot and he was great, but it did kind of fall on me to do a lot of it. And so there was, literally one year I remember, my brain just buzzed. It was this buzzing and I never slept. I just didn't, because he would fall down for the two hours of sleep and then the newborn would, and you're just like, oh. So I had 3 under 4. That was the situation.
Probably the most exhausted time of your life that you were just don't even know what tired is.
Oh, my baby's I'd go back and I'm like, I wouldn't. Yeah. So, and the diarrhea came back. I could not change him on a changing table, with a cloth. It was just everywhere. I had him tested at our local hospital and they're like, oh, because I started doing some research on, gut issues and all of that, and just kept getting shut down. Oh, he's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
I do have to tell you the pediatrician story though.
Okay.
So when I went, I had diagnosed him with autism. I was like, I think my son has autism. And I got a lot of no's, even from my wonderful family. Got brilliant people in my family with PhDs in loveliness, and no, and I think it was too all because he had developed fine for many, 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 many months. But I saw the shift because I was with him every day. And I'm like, look, he's not, this is a different child. So I brought him to the doctor who, I said, I think he has autism. And he said, no, he's just a boy. As Michael was literally doing laps around, he's just a boy. You had a girl first. You don't know what it's like to be a boy. And I said, well, I do know my child and he wasn't like this before. Something's going on. He's just a boy. So wouldn't diagnose it. I finally got a diagnosis, went back to that pediatrician. I said, look, we got the diagnosis of autism. I said, and I'm going to say the V word, I was really looking into I was really doing a lot of research on gut issues and what can cause gut issues and, change in personality, like in inoculations came up, did a lot of, and I asked him about him and he laughed at me and said, well, that's not it. You just didn't notice he had autism before. I had gone to see him months before saying, I think he has autism. And he said, he didn't have autism. So he clearly had forgotten that he had seen us because, it's like a factory at some of those pediatrics offices. That was my first moment of, wait, what? What do you talk? And of being gaslit. Yeah. Quite honest. And I just had no experience ever in my life of any kind of gaslighting. I had a pretty nice little life. And it was just all new to me. And I was shocked and I was very naive and, and then it begins. We did a lot of biomedical stuff with Dr. Bradstreet. We did ABA, speech therapy, occupational, you name it. We did it all. But yeah, like the doctor story was that first moment of a lifetime of being gaslit as a parent. And now it's interesting with Spelling to Communicate with so many people, not so many, but those people like ASHA who debunk it, say it's not a thing, that feeling of being gaslit.
Yeah, again. Exactly. You're right. You're right. It's a great example. We've been through this as parents for years and years and years.
Well, that's the fun. That's kind of I don't mean funny, haha. I just
Yeah.
mean like when I've read a few things, I tend to keep my nose out of the negative press of Spelling to Communicate because it's so amazing and wonderful that I don't go there often. But I've heard a few things about, we feel bad for these parents who are being taken advantage of.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well, that's in their statement.
yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I know hundreds of people, parents of people with disabilities, of children with disabilities. These are the most intelligent, I call them pit bulls. We're not pushovers.
No.
We will go. We will move mountains for what is best for our child.
Right.
So to say that you feel bad for us and that we're a pathetic group of parents who are just searching and will believe anything. I got news for you. I'm not going to believe anything until it shows me like, okay, so I find that funny.
Right. All right. So you've got the diagnosis. So, and then you start your therapies like everybody else. It's what the pediatrician tells you to do. It's the first thing they say to do is start ABA therapy. And then let's talk about school a little bit. What was that experience like putting him in school? What kind of schools did he go to?
Public school. We did ABA through a company. And so we would fly a consultant in, pay a huge amount.
You would fly them in?
From California. This was back in 2000.
Wow.
So this was a whole different, this is many years ago. So this was back in 2000. We just didn't have it. We didn't have it around. So yeah, we'd fly in a consultant and we'd pay for their hotel and we'd pay, $175 an hour. And then I would pay, we live right next to the University of Tennessee, and I had these wonderful college students who would come in and I'd pay them not a lot, but to sit around with a consultant as she was teaching us stuff and telling us how to program and what to do. My ABA program was I ran it. It was at home. They did start it in schools, but I went and watched and they were doing things like group ABA and I knew it wasn't right for my son. So I had a business. It was ABA programming at my house and I had employees, and my other kids just thought it was normal to have college students in their house all the time. So yeah, the ABA. Then we fought a little bit for an inclusive preschool through the city. And it was just in a really bad neighborhood. He was a runner and I was just in fear for his safety.
Sure.
That there was literally at the time we were talking about it, a shooting, a few blocks over from where this inclusive preschool was. And I said, you got a runner.
Yeah.
No. So we did place him in a typical preschool and he went there with support. It was either me or another college student. And that was great, actually. We had issues, but it was pretty great. And they were very open to have him there. And then he went to, how much detail? Because we've got a little funky thing that happened, or I could just brush over it and just say he went to public school, because we had a situation where.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much time on it because I want to get to Michael.
He ended up at public school.
But you did mention to me off camera that you had to fight a lot for him for school. So I do want to know a little bit about your fight.
We were not fighting necessarily for inclusion. Because for whatever reason, I knew the law. I knew the one little piece of the law that talked about kids,
they all have a right to education
in their
public education, whatever. Yeah.
Yes. In an inclusive setting in their zone school with full range of supports and services. So full range of supports and services to me is not an exhaustive list. Like you keep trying stuff until we've tried everything. But so he always was in a regular education classroom. The problem was they didn't really know how to, my thought was the problem. See, this is hard to talk about now because now I know differently. At the time, I didn't think he could do the work. and they didn't think he could do the work either. So it was a fight of providing materials in the regular education classroom so he could learn something. So it started, I would create some. We had teachers that were really, in his elementary school, the teachers were very kind of open. There were a few that didn't, thought he shouldn't be in that school, because our school, they sent them away to a program in a different school.
Right.
Our little neighborhood school, they thought they could do that, but that's illegal. You can't do that. So they learned that. He was in a regular education classroom. The problem was work for him to do.
Now,
'Cause
why
again,
did you not want to send him to the other school? If you felt that
didn't
he
want-
couldn't do the work that in the public school, why didn't you send him to the other program?
I didn't want him in special education.
Yeah,
Special
why? That's my question. Like, why did you want him included in the inclusion? I'm just want to know if just for parents that have a 3-year-old and they're looking at this in their future, I'm just curious what the thought process was for you.
Have you ever been in self-contained classroom? Nothing's getting done. I mean,
Right.
I went in he was in a special ed preschool for a few months. His teacher actually let me come in, and I sat there nursing a newborn and watching. And again, they were very open and I'm very grateful for that. But I saw a group of 3 little autistic kids in this special ed preschool who were learning things. And then as the weeks go on, we've got 6, we've got 8, we've got 10. And then you find out the top is 12 of these kids. I go, thinking to myself, you get 12 Michaels in a room?
No.
Do you know what's getting done? Zippo. You are wrangling them all day. So that was,
no. And did she have any aides in there?
2, but it just, you can't. And that was it. I was
No,
like,
here we have a limit of 6.
he will never be in that kind of environment.
Yeah.
And they don't teach. What are they going to teach? It was just my experience that there wasn't a lot of teaching going on.
Mhm.
And so, and it was the law. Law is the inclusive, is the regular education classroom with a full range of supports and services in their zone school.
Okay.
You cannot argue with that.
Mhm.
And as long as they're making progress on their IEP,
Right.
you can touch them.
Okay.
And so Michael always made progress on his IEP. And once we kind of got it together, I mean, we had one year where me, the teacher, his aide, and the special education teacher were all working in tandem to create modified content for him for all of the classes. And that was amazing. It was amazing. Again, even though now I know that was busy work for him, he knew, he could have done so much more had given the correct communication.
Right.
So while I thought it was a good situation, it wasn't, because of what I know now at 25.
Right.
So, if you got a kid by the time of 5 or 6, if they're not talking, they need spelling to communicate. They need it, because you're going to have, you will have started speaking at that point. And if you're not, you got to find something else, and you give them communication ASAP. And we did try the Proloquos, and we did try all kinds of alternative, and he used a little PECS book when he was younger, but it just didn't give him enough of a robust communication, a form of communication.
No, but they think that's all they're capable of.
Right. I go to the park. I'm happy. And then you've got a kid who can write. Yes. So that. It just didn't work for him. And I was and he had some speech. So we got lulled into a sense that, well, he's got speech a little bit.
Right.
But it was such basic and childlike speech that those are his words, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
That we all thought he had, limitations.
Right.
We left public school. He went to a Montessori middle school that I called Rainbows and Unicorns. And again, it was a great experience. Had I known his level of intellect, it would have been a phenomenal experience.
Yeah.
And then high school, we had a great aide, and we worked together. High school really worked together. The teachers, for some reason, seemed very open, but again, everybody had the idea he was limited and treated him like he had an intellectual disability. Everybody was nice to him. It wasn't like he was made fun of or people helped him. He was on his swim team. He participated in things.
So he was on the regular swim team with the other high school kids.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty good swimmer. Mm-hmm. One stroke. He could do freestyle.
Well, I'm not surprised that he's a good swimmer because,
Freestyle. The other ones
Okay.
are hard.
Yes.
And he's, and again, despite all of his fine motor issues with the speech and the brain connection, he weirdly has some good gross motor skills for whatever reason. He can do some things that I think other spellers can't gross motor wise, but again, the fine motor is rough, the
Right.
speech. So, and then he went to then we put him into a program at the University of Tennessee for people with intellectual disabilities. And it could have been a phenomenal program for him too, had we let him go to the classes, but we thought he couldn't understand them. So he was in, kind of lower level classes, all of the PE classes, they did have some special needs classes for the students in this UT Futures program. And again, he did all of this stuff without reliable communication. But I mean, he did learn to take the bus. He could take the bus down to the university, make his way to where he was supposed to go. He had all these interesting things he could do, which made you not think he had an intellectual disability. It's like, how can he do this, yet he can't do this? And so again, now knowing what we know, well, because his body could do that and he could figure it out and he knew what to do because his brain's fine. But when you ask him to communicate, and we only communicate in fine motor ways, we speak, we write, we type, we text,
True.
Spelling is a gross motor way to communicate. And that has just changed his world and our world. I mean, I hate to say that S word. It's very hard for me to say that, but I wonder what would have happened. What would have happened had we not found this for him?
What do you mean the S word? Oh. Yeah.
And I think he's written about it, or he's communicated through spelling about it several times in the past few months. And I think he's really adamant, like, this is a thing and I'm not the only one. And right now, incredibly passionate about getting the word out. So all non-speakers and unreliable speakers have a reliable means of communication. It hurts his soul when people, we've had a situation where people know about it, but are dismissing it. And he's like, what do we do? He's asked me those questions. What do we do? And I don't think you can't force anybody to do this. And it's not easy and it's not pretty, just like the rest of your life with autism, it's not easy and it's not pretty. Neither is this. There are days, like, you think we put up the board and he's just spelling and telling us everything. There are days his body cannot spell. There are days he can't do it and his body is just out of control and he can't do it. But man, when you know why, when you know what's going on in his head, when you start talking to him like he is an adult and that he is smart and intelligent and knows what is going on in the world. I mean, he knows world news. You name it. He's just like any other typical, actually probably more informed than a typical 26-year-old. When you start treating him like that and treating these non-speakers that way, it changes. I mean, he had lost hope. He said it was like, it's living in a silent prison. I am living in a prison. I was living, and it breaks your heart as a parent who you think you have done everything and you realize, where the hell was this? Who is gatekeeping communication? That is a human right. And we have gatekeepers of this communication.
How dare they, really?
How dare you? How dare you gatekeep this? And if you don't like it, go do something else. You cannot deny. This is not dangerous.
Right.
This saved my son's life. How dare you? And I get so upset and I try not to go there because I've got other things to do. We've got to spread the word.
Right.
We've got to work on, my son and spreading the word. But gosh, it is so excruciatingly angering to me that these people, they don't even know what they're talking about.
They don't.
They have never
They're
done it.
basing this on 20 years ago.
25 years ago. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what that was? That little incident was malpractice.
Mhm.
You don't throw away heart surgery because you have a heart surgeon that engages in malpractice.
Correct. Right.
Or if you have a tool that doesn't work, you make the tool better.
Right.
And that's what they've done.
Yeah.
I don't touch him. I don't know what he's going to say. He says things that A, I don't know. B, he speaks in a way that I don't speak.
True.
Much
Yeah.
Spelling is not, and there's no way that there's zero way you can influence them when you're doing this. You just,
Right.
and if you are, you're doing it wrong. They've never been trained in it. They've never taken the time because I'm a pretty intelligent person. I've done a lot in my life, and there's nothing more important to me than my son. So there was nothing more important to me. And it took me months and months and months, and it was excruciatingly hard. It was very hard to learn.
Right.
And a lot of people, it takes years.
Mhm.
He happened to be older, and I happened to be able to have more time, and I'm pushy. So, but it was excruciatingly hard. There's no way these people who are giving these blanket statements about spelling have even spent any time at all learning it, knowing what it's about. They are wrong.
Right.
You're wrong. If any of you are listening, you're wrong.
Yeah. She's talking about ASHA, by the way, in case
I am.
anybody wonders who we're talking about.
And other people and other,
Yeah.
there are people out there too that are like,
Yeah.
but yeah, mainly ASHA, they're the gatekeepers. That's why we can't get it in schools. For forever, people ask, what is it you want? What is your dream? My dream was to get 4 minutes inside my son's head, and I have it now. Like, I have my deathbed wish. I got it. I know what's going on with him. And I don't know why you wouldn't want that. I don't know why you wouldn't do everything you can to find out why your child who's been diagnosed with autism does the things they do. What you could, they'll tell you. He tells us. He tells us what he needs. He tells us how he needs to be treated. He tells us what he wants to do in life. I mean, we've got a little exercise we're doing with him, and it's about advocacy, education, independence, relationships, and it's what is your ultimate goal, and then the steps, then what's the first step we need to do in order to get there. Can you imagine doing that with your autistic kid? And we're doing that,
Yeah.
and we're figuring it out, and he's going to have a life. He's going to have a life. He's going to need support, of course.
Sure.
But oh my God, he's going to have a life that he's going to be proud of. And I know almost every parent with an autistic son or daughter wants to do everything they can. I know these people. I know how hard they work. I know what they will give up and what they will do. And just try spelling and give it a year or two. Just try it. It's going to change your life. It's such a gift. It's a gift that I never thought I would have. And I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful to my friend who told me about it. I'm forever grateful to our practitioner. I'm forever grateful for the young man that came to Knoxville who was already doing it and kind of, brought it out here in Knoxville. And I'm so grateful to my son for communicating with me. Oh, it's amazing. I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. And my God, I don't really like saying that because, we spent 25 years and I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars on things that we thought were right. We were wrong. And this just shows us, my God, try it. Figure out a way to get to a practitioner. You could go for 3 or 4 days. If there's nobody in your around where you live, these practitioners will do 3 or 4 days with you, where you go in and do a session in the morning, a session in the afternoon, and you can get some good training like that. And then they'll do even Zoom lessons. They're just amazing. They just want this out there too.
And I know Michael wants to get that message out too, so we're going to talk to him. Okay.
Yeah.
Now's the time where I'd like to bring Michael in and hear his thoughts about school and your spelling journey and all that. So.
So Peyton said, I think we really are at risk because we can't talk and people think we're stupid. That needs to stop now.
Michael spelled Reality is we make an effort to do the right thing, thinking that's what we must do to survive in a black and white world where we're thought of as idiots.
And the next question I asked, what's one actionable goal you have for your audience here tonight? And let's start with Michael.
Michael spelled, making sure the real world sees us like we need to be seen is a group effort. Rising up as non-speakers needs to be a priority for all of us. Toss out your misconceptions.
And John spelled, get your kids out of their group home now. Even if you think staff is great and trustworthy, I promise things are happening behind closed doors.
Am I your hero, Helen?
And Peyton said, start telling everyone you know that is non-speaking about spelling to communicate.
Can I work hard, Mom?
So there are more spellers and fewer kids and adults merely sitting in silence.
E comes, you got it, get it, R. Then after R is E. Then after E comes. I'm proud to be here.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so happy to have you, Michael. I'm so happy to have you on here. And I know that you, I saw from your mom's post on Facebook that you're really passionate about getting word out about spelling. So I'm happy to hear whatever you have to say. So where did Michael go to school? Did he go to public school or did he go to school for autistic kids or inclusion?
And through to public school, elementary public school, and then a Montessori middle school, and then a public high school.
Okay.
So
And when did he begin his spelling journey? How old was he?
18, he's 26, 18 months ago. We are
Oh,
new.
okay. So
we are
this was
infant.
not even a thing when he was in school. All right.
No.
So,
For us,
I got everything.
so did they presume competence in school?
I got it.
I don't think any of us
I got it.
presumed the
I-
competence we needed to presume.
I-
We fought
I
for
gotta do it.
following the law,
I
which
gotta
was
do it. I
full
gotta do it.
inclusion with full range of supports and services. And only after you've exhausted full range of supports and services can you think about putting them in a self-contained classroom or, changing their school or whatever. So Michael was in full inclusion his entire time in school.
He was. So did he have an aide?
Yes. And that was a fight. Everything was a fight. But I have to say they didn't allow, they did follow the law with Michael. He had an aide and he was in full inclusion. And that is the only way that I can rectify what he went through before he had a reliable means of communication. Meaning he did sit in regular education classrooms. I and nobody else knew he was absorbing everything. He understood it all. He could do it all, and he could do it at a much higher level than even what was being taught, and we just didn't know it.
Did you know?
No. I mean, it's really interesting. This will sound hokey, but with all that went on, I mean, I could always look in his eyes and just think, I'm missing something.
Mhm.
There is something that I'm just not doing. And when I say we did everything, we can talk about that. We did everything, as far as biomedical and interventions and just we did it all. And I gave up a profession, I didn't work. I was a stay-at-home mom. I also have 2 other children. And so, but it was really when he was diagnosed, I was like, that's it. This is what I'm going to do. And this is what I have to do for me to be sane, just to know that I'm doing everything I can for him
Right.
and get to a point. And he and I actually had a discussion the other day where he was talking about all the therapies got it wrong when he was young. And he said they didn't presume competence. And he
Right.
said, and you were too busy making me functional.
Right.
It's so right. That's all
Right.
I would say. We've got to get him functional so he can do this and he can hold kind of a job and he can do this and this and this. And that was my goal. And again, I'm so embarrassed by the things I said, just not presuming that competence in
Right.
him and not thinking that he was brilliant and knew everything that was going on. I used to think he had auditory processing. I was like, oh, he didn't really understand what you're saying. So everything has to be visual. So everything was visual. And I mean, the thousands and thousands of hours I spent modifying the school curriculum for him, I can't even tell you. Because that was the only way that he could spend the day in the regular classroom, is if he had something to do. And I would always say, oh, don't give him something to do when you want to see autistic behaviors happen, right? I was modifying the content with a little bit of help. It got much better in high school. High school was amazing, but we're modifying the content and he was fine. You know, he's doing his work. Well, I didn't know at the time, we thought intellectually he couldn't do the work. So we were giving him easier work to do. It was busy work, basically, stuff he could do. Well, really what it ended up was all this modified content ended up being body engager, which is why he didn't have autistic behaviors while he was in the class, because his body was engaged in something he could do, which is exactly what he's doing right now. As we sit here, he's doing word search to keep his body engaged so he can sit here and, you know, pay attention, because I didn't think he was getting everything, and he was getting everything and more as he sat in every single one of his classes. So that's the only.
I'm with you. I did the same thing. I remember telling people in front of him, oh, you just have to think of him as a toddler, you know, because he doesn't really understand you. So if you just treat him like a toddler, then you'll be, and I'm like, I regret so many things that I said, you know, and because I didn't know. You know, and I didn't know anything about Apraxia, and it was because he didn't respond when you told him something. You just naturally assumed they didn't understand what I said, you know, and meanwhile they understand everything. Michael, I would like to know your point of view about when you were in school now. So when you're in your classroom and you're understanding everything, you know, how did you feel? What were you thinking while you were in school?
My intelligence was not
I
known.
can't help it. I'm so hungry. I gotta have a wildebeest day, but start to be all right with us. No, we wait for the signal from a taxi.
My intelligence was not known, so I just sat in silence.
That's sad. I want to let everybody know, that the viewers, that Michael's considered an unreliable speaker. So sometimes what he's saying is not necessarily what he's thinking, right? So he's scripting as well. Explain that to people. And also, if we could at least once lift the board up and maybe turn around so people can see him tapping the letters, just so they understand that this is really him communicating.
Okay. I have a great little story for that. Today we were at his piano lesson, and we had a great experience with his piano teacher, who he's known for 15 years. And no, he's not a savant pianist at all. It's I just knew early on it was a great kind of fine motor, brain body, you know, work. So we've just wandered through piano, or he's just wandered through piano for 15 years. And for whatever reason, when he started spelling, he and she, her name's Rachel, he would just kind of chat with her. I mean, I'm the communication partner, but she'd ask him questions, he's respond, and they just have this easy back and forth using the letterboard. And so he was scripting Zerg, 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 and scripting all of this Zerg business. And she said, oh, Zerg, I love Zerg. I'm actually going to go to Disney next week and I can't wait. And I looked at her, and I know her well. And I said, Rach, I'm not trying to be mean to you but Michael, and I put the board in front of him. I go, what do you think about what Rachel's talking about right now? And he said, he spelled, please remember, my mouth says things I don't want to say and my brain has no interest in. I do not want to talk about Zerg.
Wow.
And that's what makes unreliable speakers really different from people that have never spoken a word. Because you think you're engaging them, you know, you think you're, you know, establishing a relationship with all these things they like. I mean, it was not devastating, because Disney kind of drives me crazy now, but when he first spoke, I don't even like Disney. It's inane. I have no interest in it. And we thought he was the biggest Disney fan ever created, because he can name every character. He can sing every
Yeah.
song, script all of the lines,
Uh,
and it's inane. I just have no interest in it. And he still does it.
mhm.
So it's unreliable communication. He will say, will this calm my body down? Hi, mom. All of these are just scripts he's learned. And it's not accessing higher level thought.
Right.
Because speech is a fine motor, and you've had Elizabeth Vossler on here, so I'm not going to go into the mechanics of all of that. But I never knew, as speech was a fine motor activity, I never knew, that your intelligence had nothing to do with your speaking. I've learned so much that
I will never.
intelligence is in a whole different part of the brain, and what comes out of the mouth
Right.
doesn't matter.
Right.
And just because he can make the sounds, which really confuses people, it's really confusing for people. And I explaining it over and over again. Remember, what comes out of his mouth is not what he wants to say. So don't engage. And he's asked us, please don't engage in my scripts.
Really?
And that's
Wow.
because his body gets angry on the outside.
Yeah.
He said, my body gets angry, but I do not want you to do this.
Right.
So living in this, like, okay, so if I do
Yeah.
respond, the body calms down, but you really don't want me to
Right.
respond. So, but I get it, because he's like, that's not what I want to talk about.
And this should be so helpful to teachers. My youngest son is a special ed teacher, and he just deals with behaviors all day long. And I know it's because they're just listening to their unreliable speech, and they're not understanding what's really going on inside, and the kids are getting frustrated all day long, and it's probably dealing with behaviors all day long. And I have been trying to, but I don't think the school is open to spelling. That's the problem.
Well, I will absolutely address that in our little scruffy city of Knoxville, Tennessee. But they're not behaviors. They are a brain-body disconnect.
Right.
Michael
It's
has
true.
talked at length. My body does stuff I don't want it to do. I cannot stop it.
Right.
He can grab a French fry. He can grab a French fry off from a stranger's plate.
Yes.
And
that's very common.
horrified. He's horrified.
Mhm.
He's horrified. It's like, I didn't want to do that. He can his body movements are not what he wants to do.
Right.
And
So
that
it's not
is
just the speech, it's the whole movement.
the whole body. Yeah. It's the whole body.
It's almost like there's two different people.
Absolutely. Yes, it's the body and then the brain. And some people just don't want to hear that. It's not behavior. They're not having any behaviors. Their body is not cooperating.
Right.
It's almost like a hiccup. You can't stop your hiccups.
Right.
And then you've got people yelling at you for hiccuping and punishing because you hiccup.
Right.
These kids are getting punished on a daily basis because of
Correct.
their behaviors. They're not behaviors.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. To learn more about our children's book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, or to learn more about what we do at Robbie's World Foundation, simply visit our website at robbiesworldbook.com.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.